There are do's and don'ts to rear mount turbos, and I'm here to teach you what they are. If you're new here, my name's Caleb, and I have a 350Z with a turbo in its butt that we installed in 2020. And after a few hiccups, it is now making right under 600 wheel horsepower. I've learned a lot along the way, and I want to go over a couple of do's and don'ts that will hopefully help you in planning and execution of your own build. Now, I'm no mechanic, so if I miss something, please go ahead and sound off in the comments, but I'm learning a lot along the way. I'm trying to hand off as much knowledge as I have consumed and hopefully help you avoid any mistakes that I made. If you guys don't mind, please be sure to watch this video all the way through, as that is exactly what YouTube is looking for in this day and age, and it is the best way to support the channel without spending your hard-earned cash. But also, I don't want you guys to miss any important information, so without further ado, let's jump into the list. Research. You guys have to do research whether you're doing a front mount, mid mount, rear mount, any kind of build. You guys should be doing research before you jump into it. This makes your expectations clear, the parts that you want clear, and a good solid plan moving forward. Some of my favorite resources are places like Facebook, mechanic shops local to me, reaching out to fabricators, and obviously YouTube for your favorite creators. Thank you guys so much for being here. You are starting off on the right foot. Once your research is done, then you can move on to the parts collecting. Now, this is a given that you'll have to get the right parts regardless of what you're doing, but there are a few specific parts that I'd like to mention that I really had a tough time figuring out at the beginning, but now that I know, I would recommend all of these parts to everyone moving forward in this kind of a build. Number one is definitely gonna be a oil scavenge pump. Now, there's two ways you can attack the oil. You can do a separate oil tank, which I've heard of people doing before, but I just didn't want a separate tank of oil in the back sloshing around. Not to say that that's a bad design. I'm sure it's a good design, but Z1 Motorsports sold a spacer for the oil pan, and it was already tapped, so I just tapped it, ran lines back to a scavenge pump, and that circulates the oil. Makes it a very, very simple setup. Just a lot of lines, but I don't really see that as a negative. But I would definitely recommend the Z1 spacer and a scavenge pump. There are many different scavenge pumps. I really don't have the right answer on which one works the best, as I'm not 100% confident in mine, but on the same hand, it hasn't broken either. So I will keep you guys posted on the scavenge pump, and if I have a good recommendation, I'll definitely link it below. Check that link just in case I found one. I could update it in the future. Wastegate placement is also very important. Don't skimp out on the wastegate. With the blow-off valves, you can skimp out. You can do eBay ones. They're like 50 bucks each. I've been running those like crazy, but the wastegate, go for the real thing. That's the important one. That's the main thing I want to tell you. And the placement is critical depending on how you design it. So have that conversation with your designer, or if you're designing it yourself, don't overlook the placement of the wastegate, because you could end up getting boost creep and having to add another one, which is extra money. That's what happened to me, but it is efficient. So it is what it is. And the last one I'll say about parts is make sure you get a step colder spark plug setup. I got OEM ones from an R35 GTR. Those are a step colder and they'll get you where you need to go. Next do is position. You gotta make sure that the position of the turbo is exactly where you want it to give you the most amount of clearance as possible. It goes without saying that rear mount turbos are close to the ground and are at risk of getting hit by debris or getting stuck in a hole or sunk in a lake. Hey look, a speed bump. You think my rear mount can go over the speed bump? We'll do the old angle trick. And I didn't catch the turbo on anything, so eat that, internet. There's no clearance, it's too low. It's too low. Now, these are all complaints I've heard before. I've never had any issues, because once you remove that muffler, there's actually buckets of space up there and you won't have any clearance issues as long as you're thinking about the design and not just, throwing them in. Put 5 minutes of planning into this, and I promise you guys will have a good result, and you'll never have to stress about if your turbo is too low and is it gonna get smacked by anything. I personally have hit many potholes, including one that was hidden. It was absolutely massive, and it actually damaged the underside of my car a little bit on the subframe, but it didn't touch anything on the turbo. So I really have 100% confidence in the placement. There is a ton of room up there. Now, if you're not working on a Z, I don't know what kind of space there is, but it's definitely something you need to think about. So do plan on getting the positioning right. The last do on my list is super important, so listen up please guys. It's supporting mods. I know power is a ton of fun. It's what we all want. But if you don't have a good foundation of supporting mods on there, one, you're not gonna be able to use that power. You're not gonna be able to put it to the ground. And two, it's gonna be unsafe. And we want you guys to be safe. Here's a few examples of very important supporting mods that I think you should have on your car before you even think of installing any kind of forced induction or power adders. Tires, suspension, brakes. Now you guys don't have to break the bank on all of this stuff. You know, there are decent tires in a lot of different price brackets, and you can get them used as long as you're getting a good year and manufacturing date with enough tread. There are coilovers literally in every single budget. And brakes, you can do something as simple as upgrading the rotors and the pads to something much more aggressive, and that at least will be better than not doing anything at all, and it will give you a better foundation for that power so you can actually use it. Nobody wants to have this power and just, you know, slide all over the place and not be able to use it. I mean, you got your car shifting all over the place. It's just sloppy. So definitely do supporting mods before you do any of the forced induction fun stuff. Man, I sound like an old man, don't I? Or don't. I mean, you know, send it, I guess. I mean, you guys are gonna do it anyways. Oh, and after you install your turbo kit, I would highly suggest a methanol injection kit. Meth kits are for the safety of the car and the longevity of the build. It basically shoots meth and water mixture in there to help cool everything down, keep those temperatures down, your car running safely and smoothly, and you happy. I have an entire video covering the installation and the benefits of it, so I will link that in the description below. So if you want to check that out, I recommend the AEM system, and I think Snow has a kit as well. I haven't had any personal experience with that one, but the AEM kit is super solid, and I will link that in the description below if you want that. Now, before we get into the don'ts, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching this far as well. You guys are awesome. My first don't is a personal preference, and that's to use as little rubber couplers as possible and use as many V-bands as possible. Now, if you're not familiar, V-bands are a clamp that holds your piping together, and because this is a rear mount turbocharged kit, there is more pipe, more section, and I think you would benefit in the long run of using these V-bands because they are extremely efficient at seals, so you don't have to worry about boost leaks. And then also for maintenance of anything, it's just a 10mm, a socket, or a gun, and whoop, whoop, you're done. Pop those pipes off, take a look around, upgrade the turbo, whatever you gotta do, throw them back together, no worries. They're a couple extra dollars, so I understand if you don't wanna dish that out, but you are risking boost leaks along that whole system. And I think they're well worth the money. So if you're willing to dish out the extra little bit for it, I definitely would say to do that. All right, and here's some don'ts for when you're actually driving this thing around. So you're all done, your car is boosted, you're having fun, you're ripping it around. Wait, don't drive it in the rain. Come on guys, you can drive it in the rain. Just don't park it in a lake. Now this goes without saying. Any car should not be going through puddles. Story time. I worked for an insurance company where I did auto claims. Every single time there was a flooding situation, that is a comprehensive. Your car's sitting there, flood comes in and damages your car. That's a comp loss. You're 0% at fault. It's an act of God or whatever they call it. And let me tell you something. When you drive down the road and there's a big puddle and you decide to drive through it, and then your engine hydrolocks and you have to call the insurance company because your engine just blew up, they're gonna say, hey man, that was a collision. You are 100% at fault because you drove through it. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's what it was. That's what I was trained to do. That's what we covered them as. Now, if you had an experience, I know people who mark them as comprehensive If you had that happen to you, you are lucky, because they should have marked it 100% at fault and it was a collision. See, they consider a body of water a object. Now, unless you drove around a blind corner and there's no lights on and you're like, hey man, I couldn't really avoid it, I didn't see it, then that's one thing. But if you on purpose drive through a body of water and cause damage to your car, that is your fault. So, as a general rule of thumb, you should never be driving your car through a massive puddle. Now, I understand that there are circumstances where you might be trapped. It is better to wait or call a family friend or get a tow. I know that's not convenient. I know that's not what most people are gonna do, but it's gonna cause damage to your car if you run through a massive puddle. So long story short, as long as you guys are running a hydrophobic sock just to block out most of that little bit of splash or whatever, you're totally fine. Just don't park it in a lake. And I'm sure no one saw this one coming, but obviously you want to avoid potholes as much as possible. Now, I know this kind of contradicts what I said earlier in the video, but let's say you didn't do the clearance or whatever, you still want to be careful. This is an investment. You put money into this, you put effort into this. So the last thing I'm sure you want is to hit that random rogue pothole or whatever and cause damage. It would take a very well placed and a very aggressive pothole to do any damage, I'm sure, as long as you have the right clearance. But like I said in my last don't, it's kind of common sense. Try not to hit potholes. We're probably lowered already. If I'm talking to you and you're interested in doing this, if you're not lowered, I would be shocked, but I'm just gonna say that we're always looking out for, speed bumps, curbs, really steep approach angles. Just keep that in mind. Now you got a turbo back there. It should be common sense, but now that you have that in there, I just want to bring it up that you probably shouldn't be hitting big potholes. All right guys, so I hope this video helped you out. A couple of do's and don'ts. Some of them are kind of no-brainers, but maybe you found a nugget in there. If you did, definitely drop a like on the video, drop a comment, and hit the subscribe button because we are almost at 10,000 subscribers. Super stoked about that. It's been my goal this year to hit 10,000 subs by the end of the year, and I'm hoping we hit that goal. I can't do it without you. You guys rock. Thank you for always supporting the channel, and I will see you on the next one. Woo-hoo-hoo!